Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, Jacqueline and I are diving into a topic that honestly I think we all struggle with sometimes. How to interrupt someone without being, well, rude. It's a fine line, isn't it?
It absolutely is, Alex. And it's something that comes up in so many different contexts, right? From a casual chat with a friend to a really important business meeting where you need to get a crucial point across, but someone else is just going on.
We've all been there, internally panicking about how to jump in.
Oh, absolutely. I've had moments where I've just sat there, my point slowly becoming irrelevant because the conversation has moved so far past it, all because I didn't want to cut someone off. It's that fear of being seen as disrespectful or impatient.
Exactly. And sometimes not interrupting can actually be detrimental. You might miss an opportunity, or a misunderstanding could escalate because you didn't clarify something immediately. So it's not always about being nice. Sometimes it's about being effective and efficient.
That's such a great point, Jacqueline. It's not about shutting someone down, but more about managing the flow of conversation. So let's kick this off with some foundational principles. What's the very first thing people should consider before even attempting to interrupt?
I'd say, first and foremost, consider your intent. Are you interrupting to genuinely contribute, clarify, or move the conversation forward? Or are you just trying to dominate or show off or just impatient? If your intent is good, then you're already halfway there. People can often sense genuine intent.
That's super important. Your why behind the interruption really matters. And then, once you've checked your intent, what about the how? I mean, people often just blurt things out, right?
They do! And that's where it often goes wrong. The key is to signal your intention to speak rather than just barging in. One of my go-to phrases, especially in a professional setting, is something like, "Excuse me, Alex, may I just jump in for a quick second there?" Or, "Sorry to interrupt, but I have a quick question related to that point."
Oh, I like that. The may I just jump in for a quick second acknowledges that they're speaking, asks for permission, and sets an expectation that you won't derail things for too long. It's respectful.
Exactly. And it's not just the words, it's the tone. A softer, slightly apologetic tone helps rather than a forceful one. You're not attacking, you're inserting yourself gently. Another one I use is, "If I could just interject here for a moment."
That's a bit more formal, which might be good for, say, a client meeting or a conference call. What about when someone is just rambling and you need to get them back on track without sounding like you're scolding them?
The Rambler. That's a classic. In that scenario, you can try to tie your interruption to something they just said, even if it's loosely related, to show you've been listening. You could say, "That's a really interesting point about X, and it makes me think we should also consider Y," thereby gently pivoting the conversation.
So you validate their last point and then you use it as a springboard. That's clever. It's like, I heard you and now let's move forward from there.
Exactly. Another one particularly effective in meetings is, "Just to make sure I understand correctly, are we saying X or are we moving on to Y now?" This works well when someone is going off on a tangent and you need to bring them back to the agenda or the main goal.
Oh, I love that. It frames it as you seeking clarity rather than you telling them they're wrong or off topic. It's collaborative. What about body language or nonverbal cues? Those must play a huge role too.
Huge! In person, making eye contact and slightly raising a hand or leaning forward can signal that you want to speak. It's like a visual permission to speak request. Often the speaker will naturally pause or acknowledge you.
And on a video call, it's trickier, but a subtle nod or a slight head tilt can sometimes work if the other person is paying attention to the video feed.
That's so true. I've found on video calls, sometimes just unmuting yourself and taking a tiny breath, sometimes that's enough for someone to notice your presence and pause. It's not always reliable, but it's a soft way to test the waters.
Totally. And if you're in a situation where you absolutely must cut in, perhaps it's urgent, a simple, "Pardon me for a moment, but," or "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but this is important," can work. The important part signals the urgency and provides a reason for the less gentle interruption.
Yeah, that's the break glass in case of emergency phrase. You use it when the stakes are high and the interruption is truly necessary. But you definitely don't want to overuse that one or it loses its impact.
Exactly. Like any good tool, it has its specific use. Let's talk about the aftermath. What do you do after you've successfully or even not so successfully interrupted? Should you acknowledge it again?
That's a great follow-up question. I think if you used a phrase like sorry to interrupt, you've already acknowledged it. But if the interruption felt a bit abrupt, or if you sensed a slight irritation from the other person, a quick, thanks for letting me jump in, or appreciate you pausing there, can go a long way in smoothing things over.
Absolutely. It's about showing gratitude and respect for their time and their turn. It reaffirms that you value their contribution even if you needed to briefly divert. It builds goodwill.
So we've talked about phrases like, excuse me, may I just jump in, or sorry to interrupt but, and using their last point to pivot. What about scenarios where someone is being particularly long-winded and you're really struggling to find an opening?
Oh, the long-winded monologue. That's tough. Sometimes you just have to create an opening. Look for a natural breath or a slight pause, even if it's just a comma in their speech. And then you have to be ready to go with your polite interruption phrase. It's like finding a gap in traffic.
That's a great analogy. You can't just wait for the perfect, enormous gap sometimes. You have to skillfully weave yourself in. And I think practicing these phrases helps. It makes them feel less awkward when you actually have to use them in the moment.
Definitely. It's like building a muscle. The more you use these tools, the more natural they become. And it also helps to internalize the idea that interrupting isn't inherently rude, it's how you do it that matters. If your goal is to add value or clarify, it's a necessary skill.
What about the context of power dynamics? Is there a different approach to interrupting your boss versus interrupting a peer or a friend?
That's a crucial distinction. When it comes to interrupting someone senior, you want to be extra deferential and ensure your interruption is genuinely valuable and brief. Phrases like, with all due respect, if I could just offer a brief perspective here, or I apologize for cutting in, but I wanted to quickly confirm X before we move on, are good. You're acknowledging their position and prioritizing efficiency.
So it's about being even more concise and impactful, and using slightly more formal language to show respect. Whereas with a friend, you might just say, hold on, I gotta tell you something about that.
Precisely. With a friend, the dynamic is usually much more relaxed. You might still say sorry to cut you off, but it's often more of a formality than a genuine apology for a perceived slight. You know your friends can handle it, and they probably interrupt you too.
True, very true. So thinking about this more broadly, what are some of the common mistakes people make when they try to interrupt politely but fail?
One huge mistake is interrupting with a completely unrelated topic. That's a surefire way to derail a conversation and annoy everyone. Your interruption should, ideally, be directly related to what's being discussed, or at least provide a logical pivot.
Oh, that's the worst. You're in the middle of a serious discussion about project timelines, and someone interrupts with, did you guys see that funny cat video this morning? Like, no, not now.
Right? Another one is not waiting for even the tiniest of pauses, just talking over someone completely. That's the most aggressive form of interruption and almost always perceived as rude, no matter what words you try to use afterwards.
Yeah, trying to shout over someone or just steamroll them, that just escalates the situation and creates friction. It's like you're not trying to win an argument, you're trying to contribute to a discussion.
Exactly. And a third mistake is interrupting, making your point, and then immediately disengaging. It's like you just wanted to drop your bomb and run. Stick around, listen to the response, and re-engage with the flow.
That's a really subtle but important point. It shows respect for the ongoing conversation. You're not just waiting for your turn, you're actively participating. Let's touch on managing group conversations. It's one thing to interrupt one-on-one, but what about when there are multiple people involved and everyone is trying to get a word in?
Group conversations are tricky because the airtime is so divided. In those situations, you often have to be a bit more assertive but still polite. You might wait for a slight dip in the energy, or when one speaker finishes their primary thought, and then quickly use a phrase like, building on what X just said, or if I can add to that point, I think Y is also critical.
So again, you're connecting it to the existing discussion, showing you've been listening and providing value. It's not just about taking the spotlight, it's about enriching the discussion for everyone.
Exactly. And sometimes in a really dynamic group, you might need to use a slightly more direct, pardon me, I actually have an urgent thought on this that I'd like to share quickly, but again, use sparingly.
I think it also helps to have a clear idea of what you want to say before you interrupt. Don't just interrupt to say or to figure out your point on the fly. Be concise and impactful.
That's a huge tip, Alex. Rehearse your point mentally if you can. Being succinct is key to a successful, polite interruption. No one wants to be interrupted only for the new speaker to ramble themselves.
Right? That would just be ironic. So, to recap some of our best phrases and techniques, using permission-based language like, may I jump in, apology-based like, sorry to interrupt, but validating and pivoting like,
That's a great point, and it reminds me. And for urgent situations, pardon me, but this is important.
And remember those nonverbal cues, eye contact, a slight hand raise, or a lean in. Practice makes perfect, and always assess your intent. Are you adding value, clarifying, or redirecting purposefully, or just being impatient?
fantastic summary, Jacqueline. This has been incredibly insightful. I think for anyone listening, just trying one or two of these phrases in their next conversation will make a huge difference. You'll feel more confident, and you'll be able to contribute more effectively.
Absolutely. It's a skill that genuinely improves communication in all areas of life. So don't be afraid to speak up, just do it politely and strategically. Thanks for joining me on this, Alex.
My pleasure, Jacqueline, and thank you all for tuning in. We hope this helps you navigate those tricky conversational waters. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing and interject with grace.